So Putin has got a problem. Either he's got to win this thing, trying to win it, or he's got a problem of soldiers coming back and saying, we've done all this and this is what we get out of it. So that's the reason I said, I go back to the potentiality of him being Nicholas II again, the last Tsar. He's reaches a point where he's got a major problem on his hands that he must resolve.
Ukraine could regain the upper hand on the battlefield and the war itself could end as early as this summer. That's the assessment from the former US presidential envoy Keith Kellogg speaking during a panel discussion at the Ukrainian House in Davos. Kellogg acknowledged the harsh realities Ukraine is facing right now, difficult winter conditions, pressure on the front lines, and the strain felt in Kyiv. But he stressed this is not the full picture. According to him, spring could be a turning point, opening the door to a possible end to the war by summer. A cautiously optimistic message delivered at a moment when the stakes for Ukraine and for its partners remain exceptionally high.
It's a harsh winter. I understand what's happening in Kyiv. I understand the temperatures. But I really do believe if Ukraine gets through this winter, January, February, and you get into March and April, the advantage accrues to you, to Ukraine, not to Russia. And I don't think they're going to have much more success in what they're doing out there.
The former general also pointed to significant Russian losses. According to Kellogg, Russia's forward units have been devastated. He says Moscow has lost more than 20 generals since the start of the full-scale invasion. Despite the ongoing fighting, Kellogg expressed cautious optimism, saying he hopes for what he called a good outcome as the conflict may be approaching to the final stages of a potential peace negotiations. But he was clear about where the real obstacle lies. In Kellogg's words, the problem is not Ukraine, it's Vladimir Putin. He argued that the Russian president has reached a psychological breaking point, unable to step back without admitting defeat. To retreat, Kellogg suggested, would mean acknowledging failure, and failure, he said, is exactly what this war has become. Kellogg noted that when you look at the territory Russia has captured, the gains are minimal, especially compared to the cost. He added that Putin fears not only admitting defeat, but also bringing home hundreds of thousands of soldiers, many of whom are likely disillusioned, traumatized, and facing the loss of wartime salaries. Those payments, Kellogg pointed out, can reach up to $8,000 a month or $200,000 in compensation in case of death. A stark reminder of the human, political, and psychological price Russia is still struggling to confront.
Now, I think the impediment to progress, and I've said this all along, it is not Ukraine. The impediment to progress is Putin. The fact is, I think he's reached a point, psychologically, he really can't let go, because if he lets go, he admits it's a failure, and what he has done is a failure. And when you look at the amount of territory they've gained, it's really minimal. And then we'll get to a point where, the reconstruction can start. We can get peace out there, out in Ukraine, and I'm hoping by Independence Day this summer, there's peace in the land.
US President Special Envoy Stephen Witkoff says there has been significant progress in talks aimed at possible end to the Russian war against Ukraine. Speaking publicly, Witkoff has also praised the engagement of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, highlighting Ukraine's active role in the negotiations. He said he is confident that discussions on ending the war are now in the final stage.
I think we've made a lot of progress. I think in the beginning of this process, there was a little bit of confusion. I was going to Moscow quite a bit, but I think it was important that we go there because we're at the end now, and I actually am optimistic. I spent the evening with David last night, with General Budanov, who's now Vice President Budanov, and Rustem. They've been amazing, by the way. To the Ukrainian people here, you have an amazing negotiating team.
US President Special Envoy Stephen Witkoff also spoke about Ukraine's economic future. He pointed to what he called a positive trajectory for Ukraine's economy and highlighted a potential tariff-free trade zone with the United States, which he says could be a game changer. Here is what he had to say.
We spent at dinner last night talking about the upward trajectory for the Ukrainian economy and financial system, capital markets, the jobs. The president has talked about a tariff-free zone from Ukraine that I think would be game-changing. You'll see industry move into that area in a huge way. Imagine you get to outcompete because you're not paying tariffs and sending goods into the United States. So there's some huge things that we've talked about that the Ukrainian people deserve because they have been so courageous in this fight. And they're under some real difficult conditions today.
Petkov also said he plans to visit Kyiv, so he did not specify when. The Ukrainian delegation held talks with the American side before they traveled to Moscow. According to Ukrainian officials, the discussion focused on economic development, post-war recovery and security guarantees. Kyiv also briefed US partners on Russian attacks targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
We briefed partners on the latest Russian attacks on civilian infrastructure, including the situation in Kyiv, where strikes left millions of people without electricity and heat. We continue working with partners, combining the defense of the country today with laying the foundation for its recovery tomorrow.
Chief of Ukraine's presidential office, Kyrylo Budanov, says he feels cautious optimism about Ukraine's path toward peace. At the same time, he stressed the country is living through the bloodiest war since 1945. Budanov said peace will not come quickly, but he added that the process has already begun.
And I would like to remind everyone that this is the most bloody and the most terrible event, the most terrible war in the territory of Europe since the Second World War. And this is definitely one of the bloodiest over the whole history of the world after the Second World War. We are moving, and I can't say that we will have peace tomorrow, that's guaranteed. If you hear someone say it, it's definitely not true. But we are making a lot of efforts towards it. First of all, we are making an effort on our part. And on the part of the United States, there are efforts, whether people like it or not like it, but there is movement. And it is real, and we are really moving. Will we be able to be successful in the short term? A lot will depend on the Russian Federation, and you understand who we are dealing with. I don't think I need to say more about it.
Budanov also recalled that Moscow continues to justify its aggression against Ukraine by citing what it calls a NATO threat. According to him, Russia is now falling into a trap set by Beijing. Budanov said the stronger the sanctions pressure became, the more Russia moved closer to China. He argued that what is happening now amounts to the de facto absorption of Russia by China economically and politically. He stressed that Beijing has not supplied Russia with finished weapons, calling this a fact, but said China is skillfully exploiting Russia's weakness by deepening economic control and expanding its political influence. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin has floated a controversial proposal widely seen as an attempt to regain access to Russia's frozen assets. Speaking during talks with the American delegation in Moscow, Putin suggested redirecting $1 billion from Russian funds frozen in the United States to a so-called peace council focused on Gaza. He thanked Donald Trump for what he described as the initiative and claimed that Russia always supports efforts aimed at strengthening international stability.
Therefore, even now, even before we decide on our participation in the composition and the work of the Peace Council, taking into account Russia's special relationship with the Palestinian people, we could, I think, direct $1 billion from Russian assets frozen under the previous U.S. administration to the Peace Council. By the way, the remaining funds from our own assets frozen in the U.S. could be used for the restoration of territories affected by military operations after a peace treaty between Russia and Ukraine is concluded. This possibility is also being discussed with representatives of the U.S. administration.
Dictator Putin has instructed Russia's foreign ministry to review the proposal for the so-called Peace Council, consult with the international partners and respond to the invitation at a later date. When it comes to using Russia's frozen assets to rebuild Ukrainian territories temporarily occupied by Russia, Putin showed no concern that it was Russia itself that destroyed them. Meanwhile, Belgian Prime Minister Bart De Wever said Russia's frozen assets will remain blocked until the war ends, and only after a peace agreement will their use be discussed. He added he hopes the money could go to aid and reconstruction in Ukraine.
And the assets will be immobilized until the end of the war, which means that, as it always went in history, when there will be a peace deal, the assets will be on the table. And let me be very clear about that. At that moment, if I have my way and I have a say in this, every penny of that money will be used for the repayment and the reconstruction of Ukraine. I would be very sad to see €1 return to Moscow. But we have to respect international law. It will happen at that moment. And between that moment and now, Europe will finance the war in Ukraine, as we should do, because they are fighting for us.
Last December, the European Union rejected the use of frozen Russian assets in Europe to finance a reparation loan for Ukraine. Belgian Prime Minister Bart De Wever stressed that Russian assets in Belgium are not formally frozen but immobilized, and noted that such funds have never been confiscated even during World War II. He warned that assets cannot simply be seized, as doing so would amount to an act of war, and Europe is not at war with Russia. De Wever also highlighted that not all European countries support Ukraine equally. At some point, some nations may decide not to extend sanctions, and if it happens, these assets would have to be released immediately. Confiscating or spending them prematurely could create serious legal and financial problems. That's all for now. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your comments below.